Hi, today's basically session is about United Modeling Language, commonly known as a UML. So we will learn the first part. We are going to learn about what is UML and the history and how we use them and what are the different types of UML diagrams are there, and how and when we select them and how do we utilize them in our professional world, especially in business analysis world. What we do here is there are the various each diagram has a meaning, and the diagram again will basically talk about how it will basically represent a particular requirement, and what are the different styles are there, different notifications are there, syntax are there, so on and so forth, and what are the formats and what are the standards it may have, right? So I'm going to basically give you a quick the background about this one. So the session is going to be focusing on introduction to the UML. Then we will focus about the use cases. Then we'll focus on this. Then we will learn activity diagram, class diagram, and state diagram. These are the only diagrams we teach in the UML. There are many other diagrams are there as well, or modeling diagrams. They are out of the scope for the business analyst. The other technical teams can use them, and we usually we don't refer them, and even if we refer them, at least we don't create them there. They are technical, they are meant for the either developers or architect or other team members. Okay, so let's basically focus on these four the UML diagrams, which will be useful for us in managing the requirement, describing the requirement, and communicating the requirement. Okay, now then the first part is about the introduction. Now if you see that the UML, it is a modeling language. It is defined by syntax and semantics. It's both. Syntax will define basically the elements, while hold on. Okay, this is 1 second. It's a The syntax defines the modeling elements, while semantics defines the meaning of individual modeling element. So there are two things, modeling element and individual modeling elements, that and serves the basis for the interpretation. So this is the two different things. Here in terms of the conceptual modeling, we are talking about it could be formal, it could be informal, or it could be semi-formal. Okay, so this is what we are talking about, and I will basically show you all the different types of basic the diagrams or different types of templates, what it could be, the formal, informal, and or semi-formal, right? Informal also can be it's also known as casual. Okay, however, the logical modeling, that is are based on the structure and the state of rules and formal notifications. Even though you use formal, informal, semi-formal, either way, in this case when you create a diagram, those are uniform, so the diagram will not change, or the standards will not change, a set of rules which is applicable to those models will not change, description will not change, only the template format, how details you want to basically get into that. So that's the basically will differentiate between whether it is a formal, informal, or semi-formal, however you want to say. Okay, now here it is basically when we talk about what is UML, is a UML basically is a industry standard modeling language for specifying, visualizing, modeling, documenting, developing, and communicating the requirements. So this is a various purpose the UML is used. Either you can specify the requirement, you can help the readers or the stakeholders visualize the requirement, you can use them to model the requirement, you can use them to document the requirement, you can use them to develop the requirement further from state A to state B, like that, and communicate the requirement, right? So this is the various ways we use the UML diagrams. And it's not only the communicating the requirement, but also communicating the processes, architectural design, much more. Okay, so this is the basically how the UML is used. UML capture the structure and the behavior of the requirement and the function of existing or to be component. So there are two things. It can basically capture the existing requirement or the future future requirement. Either way is fine. Why do we want to capture the existing requirement? When we define the current state of any solution, we need to basically use the UML to model those diagrams, not model those requirement, and that will help the stakeholders to understand what we have and what is the current capabilities and what are the current features, functionalities, requirements we have and what we need. So it gives a quick understanding for them to to know what could be the transformation journey. Okay. And when we say it uses the industry standards notations, the structure and a set of rules and diagrams to model the component to bring the team on the same understanding level. Now if you remember, we have done the same we have done the exercise, that is creating the process diagram, right? Those we have the standard structures and set of rules and diagrams, so it becomes easier for the readers to read. For example, when you describe a particular requirement, there could be some ambiguity or there could be some interpretation issues depending on the person who is reading it, right? But when it is a models are there, it becomes easier for people to understand because they have a same set of standards. For example, in the process diagram or a flow chart, if you are going to use a diamond, so then everyone will know then there is a decision, right? Same thing, if you have to basically say exit, then you may want to basically the end that one with the circle, and you can basically color that particular circle with red color. So this is where the readers will understand that's the end of the process. You see, so those are the basically set of rules what we have, and it has a standard structures are there, notations are there. So there won't be any confusion when somebody is reading those kind of the models. And if they need additional information, they can refer the requirement description. So this is how the requirements and the models complement with each other, and they improve the understanding, and they also improve the communication. Basically, how do we communicate the requirement? You think about the global business scenario where the client is somewhere in the Europe or US, and the business analyst is in India, and your developers are in Vietnam or in China. So everyone is coming from a very different background, cultural and the social background. Social will not be important here, but at least a cultural background. So our thinking may be a little different. How do we basically use our English? Because again, if you see, there is a difference between the British English, American English, Indian English, Chinese English, and Vietnamese or the Filipinos or Japanese English, right? So when you describe a particular requirement, there could be some confusion, or there could be some additional the description may be required, or additional there could be some confusion, additional sessions you may want to conduct in order to explain them. So that in order to reduce those additional communication sessions and save the time and money, time and efforts, we can basically create this modeling diagram. Okay. And it's not only the sessions we are talking about. It's again, some people may not be able to communicate with you openly. If they have any ideas, if they have any confusion, they may just go ahead and develop based on what they think, and if it is already developed and tested, then it comes to you and it is not the correct one, then you can think about how much amount of the time and money has been wasted. Okay, next point we talk about, it is one of the primary objective of the UML is to reduce ambiguity of the documentation or the textual description of the requirement or the design that may be subject to multiple interpretation. This is already I covered. The rational software originally created by the UML, and the same is now maintained by OMG, that is a object management group. OMG has again professional exams. If you want to learn more, you can basically go to their website, and they have a lot of information available. That's I think omg.org, so you can basically explore additional details once you complete this training. Okay, next I would like to talk about is basically key concept. Here it is, when we talk about the key concept, there is a difference between the system and the requirement. What is a system modeling and the requirement modeling? So somebody may ask you, the system modeling use the conventional modeling, while the requirement modeling use the logical modeling. Okay, so the conventional modeling and the logical modeling we will see when we just get to the class diagrams and other places. Okay, so and the system modeling illustrate the system and subsystem and components. If you remember the architectural diagram, so that is how it is basically captured, system diagram, architectural diagram, and it also captures the input and output of the particular component or particular subsystem, while the requirement modeling will be illustrate a specific requirement related to the problem or the features or the functionalities. Okay, so this is how we will do. Next we talk about basically the components of UML. So what are the components are there basically? There are various components are there. UML will use many components from a different source or the model of the requirement. Okay, so in this case, if you are looking at a structure, what is a structure? For that you will have the actor. Actor again is a person, or it could be system. Anyone who interact with the system, that is a person. For example, the system also interact with other system automatically based on certain business rules. For example, a batch processing at 12 o'clock, right? So at the time that who is actor here? Actor is basically a clock. So the moment the system clock reaches to the 12, that is a midnight, so it will start the taking the backup. So that is how it could be. Actor could be a person, actor could be system. Okay, then it could be attributes, that is additional details. It could be object, it could be any okay, and then it has basically interface and class, package and component. In this case we are going to use only the actor, the class, okay, while creating, and a component while creating our diagrams. Some of the, as I mentioned here, some part of the modeling is out of our syllabus because they are technical in nature. Okay. Now next we talk about the behavior. We capture the behavior in terms of behavior. What do you mean by we capture the activity? How the system goes through a different series of activities or the events or the methods, right? And the different messages it may communicate, different operations it may fulfill, or it also have some kind of a use cases and the state diagram. Okay. So these are the basically component of your the use cases, UML. Then it will also depict the relationship. What kind of there are different types of relationships are there, like association, composite relationship, aggregate, join, disjoin, dependency, inheritance and other concept. If we are creating a diagrams, for example, if you are looking at the activity diagram, you will find these kind of diagrams like joining, disjoining, or you may also find dependencies, inheritance, this kind of basically the relationship you will find in the diagram, and the relationship will be described using a different types of arrows. Okay, so that we will basically cover at later stage. Now here it is, there are the different types of basically the models in the use cases. In there are many, but in our the syllabus from the business analysis perspective, we will do only 4. The use case diagram, that is a high level use case diagrams, are created to illustrate system overview, to define system scope. If you remember, high level use case we have used for solution scope, vision document. If you remember those, the we have the all the features and functionalities were captured at the high level use case. I hope you remember that. And the detailed use case basically will illustrate a particular function or the feature and how it will interact with the system and how the system will react to the actor. So these are the things what is captured. Then we talk about the activity diagram. In the activity diagram, basically it is used for illustrating the business process sequence modeling of a requirement or the function or the use cases. In the activity, if you are creating the activity diagram, then you did not create the process diagram, otherwise it will be duplication. Okay, so you can use one of them to basically describe your the process. Okay. Then next comes to the class diagram. Class diagram is used for data modeling. Remember, data modeling, it could be, you can use the ER diagram, that is entity relationship diagram, or the class diagram, but using the both could be duplicating. So if your organization is using the UML standards, so you may want to use the class diagram. And to illustrate and the structure of the data with regard to system and the system context. This is used to define the system context, class diagram. Then comes to the state diagram. The state diagram is used for illustrating the events, the behavior and the individual state and the triggers that causes the transitioning between the state. Now earlier we have mentioned here how this in the event basically are changing from one state to another state, right? And the behavior and the individual state basically will be described in the state diagram, and also we will describe how a particular trigger will cause the transition between these two states. Okay, so these are the 4 diagrams in the scope for the business analyst. Okay, if you go on the UML, the omg.org, you will find many other diagrams as well, but don't waste your time and what you will focus on those. Now comes to the first, what we're talking about, the use case. Okay, now use case is a technique basically for capturing a potential requirement of an existing system or the future system, right? So in this case we may capture one or more scenarios. Okay, so it could be at the high level, it could be at the detail level. Okay, so this is basically what we will do that, and I will show you the notations how we basically will be used. Okay, each use case provides one or more scenarios that will convey how the system should interact with the end user. That is important, how the system should interact. Again, end user depending on the end user's role. If you remember, we talked about end users' roles and responsibilities, right? So we have to ensure that end users' roles are captured. Or another system to achieve a specific business goal. So how will you basically achieve a specific business goal? It's one is interaction and one is achieving the specific goal. It means that you want to withdraw a cash. Okay, so in withdrawal, cash withdrawal is your end goal, but the how you interact with the system is also another part. So the interaction and then what you call achieving the end goal. So these are the 2 things. Use case typically avoid the technical jargon. This is important because you will not find it. That's why it is very easy to read and understand. That's important. It's basically avoid technical jargon, preferring instead the language of the end users or the domain expert, right? So they will use the business language so that it is easier for the business as well as the technical team to basically understand. Use cases are often co-authored by business analysts and the end users, so that we know how the end user will interact with the system. Next, the little bit about history of the use cases. If you see 1986, Ivar Jacobson, an important contributor to the UML and unified process, originated the concept of the use case. So again, use case is one of the UML diagrams, right, models. So in terms of defining what the use cases are and how to write them effectively was provided by Alistair Cockburn in his book Writing Effective Use Cases. This is a very important book if you want to master it. Is not a very big book. You can easily, and you may find also actually somewhere online. So you can just after completion of the session, you can just get this book and read that. Okay, but that book only focuses on the use case, not the other part of the UML, not other models. Okay. During 1990s, use cases become one of the most common practices for capturing the functional requirement. But again, it comes with, since this information was written mostly by the IBM and who were also promoting the UML, and how the IBM or any other software vendors or software IT companies, they basically prefer to use the UMLs and other standards in order to promote basically promote the standards and also the quality of the requirement and reduce the cost of software development. But if you are working in a bank or at the client side and or the business analyst, you may not even come across this many UML. Okay, many of them, they don't even use that. Now, scope and the goal of the use case. From the engineering perspective, a use case describes just one feature of the system, okay, but not the same case. If you see, remember when we did a solution scope, we could basically capture the scope of the solution at a high level. For most software project, this means the multiple, perhaps dozens of the use cases are needed to fully specify a new system. That means we are describing each and every features. So the features, it may have like a 12 to 20, or it could be more depending on the solutions. Okay, the degree of the formality of a particular software project and the stage of the project will influence the level of details required in each use case. Again, if you want to connect back this with your original BA approach mentioned in the BABOK book 3.1, in that, if we have said we want to follow the formal process or informal process, based on that you can basically choose the degree of formality. Okay, the use case defines the interaction between the external actor and the system under consideration to accomplish the business goal. So this is important. You have to capture how the external actor interact with the system, and remember that system interaction is in what is happening in the system is captured within the box. So the actor is always outside the system. Actor is always outside the system, not inside the system. So we will when we create the use case, we will depict that one. Okay, the next we talk about is the use cases treat the system as a black box, exactly what I'm mentioning, and the interaction with the system, including the system responses, are as perceived from outside the system. So when we capture these use cases or the requirement in the form of use cases, we will follow these notifications, this rule basically. This is deliberate policy because it simplifies the description of the requirement. If you try to get into what is happening in the system, it is extremely difficult and get complicated and confusing. And it also avoids the trap of making assumptions about how this functionality will be accomplished. Be short enough to implement one software developer in a single release. So when you are basically writing the use case, you don't want to capture too much of a jargon. Again, we have defined two different types of basically description of the use case. One is an informal way and the second is a formal template. Okay, so we will basically go through them after the slides. Okay. Then we will talk about when the use case should be used. It is basically to describe the business task to serve the business goal, and it should not basically have any implementation specific language, and it has to be at the appropriate level of details, and it should be short enough to implement by one software developer in a single release. Exactly what we mentioned, but in the point wise here, this is what we kept. Okay. Now there are some standards we have mentioned here. I'm not going to go through much details, but the important one, the first is written description of the system behavior regarding, there are two types, right, two areas. The first is a written description of the system behavior regarding the business task or the requirement. So you have to describe the requirement and then use this one. This description will focus on the value provided by the system to the external entities such as human users and other systems. So what kind of value it will provide to the actor when they are interacting with the system. Okay, so it, for example, we are talking about they will provide them they will facilitate the actor to achieve the goal. What is the goal here? Goal could be withdraw the cash, goal could be transfer the amount by through ATM, goal could be order some menu on in the restaurant, like that. The second position or the context of the use case among the other use cases. Okay, and as an organizing mechanism, set of a consistent coherent use case promotes the useful picture of the system behavior, a common understanding between the customer, owner, user and the development team. So this is again extremely important. A is that you are listing the features of the systems or the solution in a systematic way, so that the readers will have a proper picture, you know. And second part, there will be basically it will again bring all the people, like a business and technical people, on the same understanding level, which is actually a very crucial part of this writing the use cases. Okay, so it will help you to reduce the duplicate work and again save the money. Next we talk about, it is a common practice to create a supplementary specification to capture the requirement details that lies outside the scope of the use case description. For example, these topics could be performance, scale, management issues, and standard compliance that we will capture into a requirement, not in the use case. Here some notations are there. Okay, just hold on. This is how the use case will look like, a oval shape. In the middle the name is mentioned here, use case name, right? And the system boundary will look like this. The name of the system is mentioned here. Okay, name of the use case will be mentioned, or the boundary will be there. So anything within the boundary you may have the use cases. Okay, like for example, fund transfer, a customer should be able to transfer the fund online, so that is the name of your use case. Okay, and the name could be the name of the use case could be verb, noun that could be describe the use case in 2 to 4 words, like a fund transfer, 2 words. What are the actors now here when you talk about the actor? Okay, you just hold on. The actor could be external entity, that is outside the system boundaries, who will interact with the system. If you see the picture will show you either the people or the system or the timer or the system. Okay, and both the person or the system can be actor as shown below. Just a second. Okay, are you able to see, or you want me to increase the? Okay, it is basically include and exclude, extend and include. Extend relationship, it will illustrate an optional extended function of the use case. It captures, let me just reduce back, and then only for the diagram I'll increase. Okay. Okay, extend basically it will illustrate an optional extended functionalities of or the use case, right? It captures a normal behavior and an exception. Exception is captured in the use case in the separate use case. So I will talk or give you the example. For example, when you say add a beneficiary, it is an optional. Only you use it when the beneficiary is not there. So when you say fund transfer is a use case, then in that case you will include the other details and you will include the beneficiary. But if the beneficiary is not there, you may want to add a beneficiary. That is, add is an extended facility of fund transfer. Okay, like that. So the same thing, and in the it is just opposite now when it says included. Included is a mandatory function. Like for example, when you mandatory function of the use case, that is primary use case. Okay, for example, if it is a fund transfer, what is a mandatory? Add the beneficiary is a mandatory, add the amount is mandatory. Okay, so those are the, add the security code could be mandatory, those are the features are there. But add then you transfer the fund, but the beneficiary is not there, and if you want to add the new beneficiary, add a new beneficiary, in that case that becomes your the extended. Otherwise you need to include. Again, I'll give you another example. If it is ATM, if you want to use the ATM as a use case, but you have to provide a password, right, or the pin code, without that you cannot function. So that is a mandatory functionality, that is a password verification or pin verification. But when you finish your cash withdrawal, when the machine asks you, do you want to print the receipt? And when you say yes or no, so that's an optional. So that is extended. So you remember here, your PIN verification in the ATM is included, but printing the receipt is basically extended facilities. Okay, extended part of the primary use case. Okay, it is used in valuation, validation of the user interaction, sanity check on the sensor inputs, and check the proper authorization. Here we are given example, security code verification before completing the transfer. The system will verify the security code entered by the customer before completing the transfer of the fund to ensure the secure transfer. Okay. Then it comes to basically create the use case diagram. Author will have to refer to the activity diagram, sequence diagram, communication diagram, and the state diagram. So when you create, all these diagrams are basically connected back to your functional requirement document. So if that is important, how you write your first document. If you write your first document correctly, all other documents will become easy. It will be easier for you to write. If any information is wrong in the first, like a vision and scope document, that will basically carry forward to all these areas. Okay, so that's one reason, is that why we need to basically have so many times verification validation process. Okay, now let me go to the next level. Okay, I just give you one, how the diagram should look like. Give me 1 second. Okay, if you see here diagram, it is use case, that is use case A will include use case B. Use case A may extend use case C. If the dotted line is there, include and extended, it is mentioned here. Okay, and use case include and extend. It is simple. If you see, the use case is a oval shape, and if you see that this is a primary use case, that is A, and this is your secondary, you can call that as a, okay, the use case B and the C. And if you see that the square box, that is representing your system boundary. Okay, so what I'm going to do is basically open this is a theory part, and there is another section I'll go to open. I'm going to show you the formal and informal way of doing it. Hold on, let me just check if there is anything else. Okay, then we will see how the casual and the detailed one. Okay, and before that I have some information. Okay. Okay, use case template. This is when you are doing a formal template or the detailed use case. Okay. Before that, let me just go back to your casual one. I'll just share the book actually. Hold on. Okay, it's just not moving. Let me just, this is what exactly we have done just now. I'm just going to show you the two different types of a use case. How do we describe them? Okay, so this is not going to stop now. Are you able to read this one? Yes, okay. There are more components are there. I'm going to basically talk about them as well. Okay. This is a semi-formal. If you want to see, this is a semi-formal. It's just like a requirement catalog. You can use the Excel sheet and write down, use unique ID for the use case name, that is your online fund transfer, description, brief description in 1 or 2 lines, allow the customer to transfer the fund online, priority, business priority, low, medium, high, or the ranking, this one, and I've given high as a 10 ranking. Complexity, it is a technical complexity, if it is done earlier or not done, how difficult it is to implement. Okay, and in terms of the use case diagram, you can basically put a brief diagram here. Okay, a small diagram I put in here. I'll just show you here this diagram. We will see this diagram. Okay, here the user is interacting the fund transfer, and this is a system boundary, and here is a fund transfer is mentioned. Let me just see one more time if there can be zoom is possible. Okay, here it is a customer interacting with the system. The system, it is shown as a boundary here. If you see both the actors, customer and the system outside, okay, and this is your fund transfer. And a fund transfer, if you see here, if you have, is your what we call use case, and it is include the verify security code and extend add beneficiary. When you are talking about the fund transfer, it will verify the security code, and the system outside is verifying that one, right? And the same thing when you say add a beneficiary, system will validate and add the beneficiary. The primary use case is here fund transfer, and both the systems are interacting from outside. So it's a very simple way. It is depicting how the use cases, I mean how the use case is there, and how they interact with the system. Okay, and I'll give you a little more details. Hold on. This is a semi-formal, you can use it. Casual, then there is no standard format for the casual. Okay, then I will just go give you a little bit of a formal. If you are looking at a formal, then you may want to include some of the details. Okay, and the details in terms of here, these are the details are there. Use case name, iteration number, that is if the use case has changed, iteration or version number. Then summary of the use case or the description, which will describe the use case. Okay, and the precondition, what should be the precondition before the use case is executed. Okay, and then what the trigger is, what will trigger the use case to start. For example, in the ATM machine, if you see the screen, it will basically stay, it looks different, but the moment you insert the card, then that is triggers basically the ATM to basically start the use cases, right, or execute. Then basic concept of the event, course of the event, so that you have to again capture how the basic course means, basic flow, the events will be there, 1, 2, 3, we can capture. I'll show you the example. Then we model is the one which I showed you, the picture, the model we have to create, and basically that's where you can have put it into the template. And then, or you can have also alternate path. You may have a basic path, you may have also alternate path to achieve your goal, so that also has to be captured. Then the post condition, what should happen at the end of the goal. For example, once you achieve the goal, what is the one, it will give you the receipt, but again it will go back to the old screen, or the what we call the home screen, what we may call, right? So it will just go there. Then you may have is the business rules. It will also capture the various business rules associated with that particular use cases. Notes will provide you additional details about the notes, and author and the date will give you information about who has written and when. So whenever you read all this information, you will get a complete picture about the use case, and this is how we will use a template to capture all the details. And if you see, different templates may have additional sections like assumption, exception, recommendation, technical requirement, and so on and so forth. But these are basically additional and as required. But above what we have mentioned are basically a standard templates. Okay, this is a description mentioned here. You can go through them, and I'll show you. And here some benefits are mentioned. Okay, so this is the use case template basically. I'll just take it to the next page. Actually, it will be easier for you to view. Okay, I'm not sure whether you can see this. Okay, so if you see the use case template, it just try to make it look beautiful, and use case identification and the history. So you can write out the name of the use case here, and use case ID, use case name you can write here as well, and the version number. Use case model, what we have created, we put it here. Okay, and if you see here, it is a purpose of the use case or the rationale, okay, that you can write down. Updated, who has updated, and date. Who is approved, the person or the role we usually write down, don't write down the name, and the date. Here it should be also the role actually, but the name is mentioned here. The reason is if there are any changes or updates are required, we can do that. Okay, who is the business owner is so and so person, and this is the email ID. Trigger, what will trigger? The user click the fund transfer, that is the time the fund transfer will start, right? The user triggers this use case by confirming the transfer fund. Even though he will go to that page, but still fund transfer is not initiated unless he fill up all the information and confirm the transfer, right? Like that. What are the reference documentation you use? Some of the policy document, fund transfer policy and Anisan fund transfer policy. This is basically thinking about Anisan Bank. Okay, and frequency of use, it is often. Yes, and when the customer requires transferring the fund. What is a precondition? Actor must be logged on to the system. Actor must have the access right to transfer the funds, and also he or she should have a registered mobile number and a valid beneficiary in their account. Otherwise, then you have to add a beneficiary. What is a post condition? Fund is transferred using unique ID, transfer ID, and accounts are updated. Relevant information is distributed in a predefined structure to the customer. Non-functional requirement, at any given time at least 30,000 customers should be able to transfer the fund. That is, you are talking about the volume it should handle. Then assumption and the issues, customer have access to the online banking solution and customer logged into the system. Customer has beneficiary registered into the account. And the steps you can write down. Steps is taken into the second level. If you see, let me take this into the second page. Okay, this becomes very crucial actually. What is a basic flow? If you see, we have mentioned the steps, the user action and system response. This is very important, and this is why it is different from what requirement we have basically captured earlier. Now first step, if we say user choose the account from where and then he or she desire to transfer the fund. System will display and the prompt the list of accounts from the repository. User chooses an account to where they wish to transfer the fund. User prompts the list of beneficiary. Okay, the Actor specifies the required input, enter the amount in the field. System checks the data format as integer. If the format is not integer, system prompts the alert. That's a basic rule, right? Okay. Next we talk about a confirm the transfer. When this then what the system will do, system provides an option to confirm the transfer, and the system verifies the business rules. Number one, the transfer fund is less than balance amount, right? Otherwise bank will go bankrupt, right? Then second, transfer amount is less than daily permissible amount. So the total daily permissible amount, actually it is not only daily, means if he has done earlier 2 transactions, those also has to be counted. Okay. Okay. Then after the next is that after successful verification, system generates the code and system send the code to the registered mobile. So these are the action is happening, okay, all along. Then we talk about basically actor receives the security code and enters into the security code online. What is system is doing? After receiving the security code from the user, system validates the same. System generates the transfer ID and transfer amount. System updates the account. System generates the communication or the notification and distribute or the send it to the customer, right? So this is the action and reaction. Then you have alternate flow. Oops, hold on. Okay, what is alternate flow here? Actor re-enters the amount if the amount is not in line with the business rule specified in the 4, and system provides an option to re-enter the input and verify again. Second, actor chooses to use alternate code for verifying the security code. System provides an option to verify through ATM pin. What are the exception code? Now exception 4, the actor enters the bigger amount than the balance amount. The system throws an alert, there is no sufficient balance, please re-enter the amount. Actor is inactive on the system ends the session for the security reason mentioned in the FRD number, whatever it is, okay, and the message is displayed, your session has ended, please relog in. Question? Is it okay? If no question, I'm going to basically start basically the click chart, and we will create one use case. Okay, give me 1 minute, so we don't need this one. Okay, here I'm going to use is a click chart. I'm going to share with you. Hold on, give me 1 second. If you see here the click chart, in this case you will see there are various types of diagrams are there. You can choose the UML diagram here. Okay, I'm selecting the UML diagram. So these are the basically various options you will have: the actor, use case, the system, and the class which you can use them. Okay, so let's basically take the actor here. Simple, just a drag and drop. If you have a 2 actor, I can just put 2 and say accept. Okay, then you may have use case. It's a very simple way of doing it, it's not very complicated. I know the fund transfer has 3, so I'm just writing the 3. Okay, so simple way, basically actor is here customer, Okay, so click on this and then just a little bit extend so that it looks system. Okay, so the use case here, what is the fund transfer? I'm just first preparing all of them, then we can connect them. Then I'm going to keep him at the far end. Then we will have these two. Security verification. Then we will have, after security verification, what you have is add beneficiary. Then you can use a straight line to connect them here. You can use the arrow is okay. You want to make it look them neat, so you can basically use the pointer and drag them appropriately. Okay, now I'm going to use this as a system boundary here. I'm going to use it end, because what happened if you do it first, then the other diagram will disturb the other diagram. Okay, so I'm going to basically, don't worry about it, it will basically, you can ensure that it just covers appropriately. And what you do here, send it back so you can see all of them. Okay, now I had to write the name of the basically, so I will use the text and I'll write down here fund transfer. Okay, so you can use a pointer and take this one here. Now you want to basically increase the font here. Okay, make it a little bold. Okay, so if you don't want to if you don't want to change the line and make it as a solid, instead of solid you can make it as a long dash, that is fine. Okay, some places there are no arrows. If you don't want arrows, you can also remove them, so it depends. Then you select them here and go to the solid line. So you may see you don't want none, so you just remove them. Select one by one all of them. I'm just going to select in all of them in one go. Okay, it's not, so I'll just let me do like this. Okay, selected all of them and go to the arrow and you say none, so all of them is basically done. All of them happened. I think this was not, these two were not selected, so now I will just use a text one here and again say include and extended. Actually it is, this is your included, so you can use this little bit turn around, yeah, and this is your extended. You want to basically, yeah, okay. So this is the way you can basically add and create. And if I want to reduce the size of this one, this is how it will look like. Queries?